Welcome to this afternoon's webinar. I'm Sophie O'Keefe and I'm the General Manager at English Australia. And English Australia is delighted to be hosting this webinar in conjunction with Deakin University. Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from where I'm presenting today, the Diep people, and acknowledge all of the traditional owners of the lands from where you're tuning in from today. English Australia is delighted to host this webinar in conjunction with members of the team that developed the Best Practice International Student Engagement Guides. Today's webinar will focus on one of the 6 new guides, the Guide for Enhancing International Students' Mental Health and Wellbeing. English Australia was pleased to be able to support the International Student Engagement Guides project through my involvement on the advisory panel for the project. And we're pleased that Ellicott's case study examples have been included throughout the guides. I'd now like to introduce the presenters of today's webinar, Helen Forbes Mewett and Diep Nguyen, who are both part of the project team that worked on these guides. Helen Forbes Mewett is Associate Professor of Sociology in the School of Social Sciences at Monash University. She's Research Lead of the Monash Migration and Inclusion Centre, Senior Fellow with the International Education Association of Australia, and Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Sociology. Diep Nguyen has completed her PhD in International Education from the School of Education at Deakin University and Master in Lifelong Learning from the Institute of Education, University College London. She has experience in teaching and supporting international students in ELICOS and the higher education sector in Australia. Thank you so much for joining us today, Helen and Diep. And I'll hand over to you now, Diep.
Thank you so much, Sophie, for the great introduction. And before we start, I just would like to thank English Australia for the generous support in organizing this webinar, and also special thanks to you, Sophie, for your involvement in the project as the member of the advisory panel, and all the ongoing support to our project in different project activities. So we really appreciate your contributions and inputs. That means a lot to us. And thank you to all participants for joining the webinar today. This is one in the series of 5 webinars that we are undertaking to disseminate the results and resources we have developed from this project under the fund of the Department of Education. So before we start, I'd like to make some notes about the slides and recording. So this session is being recorded, and the recordings and both the recordings and the slides will be shared with you, but not right after this webinar. We will hold that until around 1 week later, because we are having 2 upcoming webinars to introduce all the guides together as well, and we encourage people to attend the webinars. So we will do that. We will share with you the both the slides and the webinar after we finish all the webinars. And the last webinar we are having is on the 12th of December. So please expect to receive the slides and the recordings after this date. Okay, then the structure of this webinar today is that I will speak a little bit about the project overview. And then Helen will speak in more detail about the guide for enhancing international student in mental health and well-being. Then we would talk about the virtual map and case studies, which are also the important component of the resources developed out of this project. And then we'll come to the Q&A session. Because this is in the format of the webinar, you are not able to turn on your microphone. So you're welcome to type in your questions in the Q&A chat box, Q&A function. And if you have any comments or feedback along the way, you can also type in the chat box as well. So we will monitor both the chat box and the Q&A. Yes, so let me start the presentation. We don't need to do that. Okay, a bit of overview about the project. So this project on international student engagement is funded by the Australian government under the International Education Innovation Fund. The overall objective of the project is to provide information and resources for education providers across the different sectors of the education sectors, including higher education, vet sector, early course pathway, and school sectors as well, as long as other related stakeholders who are working with international students or whose work is in supporting international students. The information and resources from this project is to provide information about how to enhance and better support international students in the work that you're doing. So the specific aims of the project are number one, to identify innovation practice in international student engagement across a range of areas. And these areas are the different areas of support needed by international students, which we will talk a little bit later in the themes of the specific guides, but one of which is mental health and well-being. And we have identified, a large number of good practices in this area. And we have included some good practice examples in the guides and also in the virtual map that I will talk a bit later. The second aim of the project is to develop and promote the guides and resources to enhance international student engagement, which we are doing today, sharing with you about the resources. And the last one is to increase recognition of the contributions of international students and the value of international education to the Australian community, because very often international students are not recognized for their contributions, for their knowledge and skills and capabilities. So that leads to perhaps, mistreatment or lack of empathy or lack of support for international students. So this is one of the very important aim in our project. So the project team includes Professor Li Chuan, who is the project lead. She's from Deakin University, and she has done a lot of amazing work in international education and supporting international students. We have Professor Jill Blackmore, whose work is focusing on higher education and international students in school sector. We have Daniel Hartridge, who is a practitioner who has 30 years of experience working in international education. Associate Professor Helen Forbes Mewett, who is with me today from Monash University. She has done a lot of work on mental health of international students. We have in the team, we have Renata Andana, who is a international student and who's done a lot of design work for the guides and resources. And myself, Diep, I'm the research fellow from Deakin University, and also the project manager of this particular project. With that, we would like also to thank the Department of Education team for their ongoing support and guidance throughout the project activities. And without them, we couldn't have done all of these. So the whole idea is about developing the guides and the framework, which are evidence-based, and that is informed by research done by ourselves and also by other people in the literature. So the research consists of 4 components. The first one is desktop analysis. So we analyze existing literature in supporting international students, and we review all the good practice examples which has been reported to us. And the second one, which is a large-scale surveys, where we collected responses from 6,000 participants, including 3,500 responses from international students, around 700 responses from alumni, which is really amazing, and also nearly 1,000 responses from stakeholders who are staff working in education providers and who also other related organizations. For example, government and non-government organizations from Asians as well. The next thing is the consultation workshops. So we've done 11 of them, with each of them focusing on one particular theme. And the themes are the themes or areas of support come up from the desktop analysis and also from surveys. So we've done 11 of them and collected inputs from 213 stakeholders. And the last one is the in-depth interview with 40 key stakeholders. So this is, the large-scale research, and it's as Professor Li Chen said the other day, it has taken the whole village to develop all the resources from this project and this research. So what has been developed from the project is 4 components. The first one is the 6 guides, and as you can see from the list here, the 6 guides are on enhancing international student engagement on different themes or areas. And with that, I'm going to show you the images of the guides here. So illustration. The first one is a guide for enhancing international student engagement through teaching, learning, and language, which is an important, of course, an important area of support for international students, which because this is the key purpose and key aim for international students when coming to Australia or any other countries overseas to study. Then the second one is to enhance international students' intercultural and community engagement, and this one is all about supporting the connection and the sense of belonging, the connection and interaction of international students with their domestic students, domestic friends, other international peers, and also the local community within their institution and also outside. The third guide, which is the focus of the webinar today, is the guide for enhancing international students' mental health and well-being. And as you can say, you can tell from the title, it is about mental health and well-being of international students, isn't it? The next one is about enhancing international student engagement through work integrated learning and employability. So research has shown that employment is one of the one of the purposes, one of the top purposes that international students came to Australia. And they have a lot of difficulties in finding jobs and also developing their employability skills. So this guide is all about supporting them in this area. The next one is in accommodation. So due to the shortage of accommodation and also a lot of issues they are experiencing in finding accommodation, for example, scams and exploitation, mistreatment from the landlord, for example, this guide is about supporting them in this area. And the last one is a guide for crisis navigation. Crisis here we can refer to any type of big crisis like national war or pandemic, but it can also be some personal issues that they have to go through, for example, homelessness, for example, or any problem that happened back home, for example, the loss of a family member that can hit the international students hard and it can affect them very badly. So that can be included in that last slide, that's the last guide, sorry. So these are the snapshot of the 6 guides. Let me come back to the previous. Okay, to the previous one. Okay, here it is. And the next one is the framework for developing innovative programs to enhance international student engagement. And I will speak in more detail about this framework in the next slide. The third component of the resources developed from this project is the virtual map, which I will also go and demonstrate to you in the later part of this presentation. So virtual map is basically the directory of all the support services, support programs that can be available to international students, and they can go there and find the support from these programs. So it's a directory and very convenient in that sense. We have also developed 5 case study videos where we showcase the 5 typical examples of supporting international students, and we interview the staff from these programs who share with us how they develop the program, how the program works, and how the program has enhanced international student engagement in their organization. So yeah, that is a summary of the resources. And in the next slide, I will talk a bit more about the framework. So the framework is, the purpose is to support staff when you set up a new program in supporting international student engagement, or when you are reviewing your existing program, you can also refer to this framework because the framework provides the key principles for the successful or innovative program in supporting international students. The principles presented in this framework is as follows. The first one is co-design, which is about involving international students themselves in the design and delivery of the program, because the program is to support them and is about themselves, so it's really good to have them involved in the design. And the next principle is about empathy, feeling empathetic for the problems or the needs and issues that they are experiencing, and that is really helpful in designing, keeping that in mind in designing the program. The next one is inclusion and responsiveness, so inclusive to all different groups of international students, not only one particular group, and being responsive to the changing circumstances that are happening around them as well. Accessibility and clear communication proves to be very important, because if the program is not accessible or is not clearly communicated to international students, they won't be able to access the program. So this is another important principle. Integration, so integrating the support program in the whole of institution approach, because that is one key part of the institutional approach. So we emphasize on the integration of this program with other programs happening in your organization. Coordination with other programs, with other organizations as well, to make sure that there's no repetition, duplication, or to leverage, the resources that have been out there in the sector. Sustainability is very important, because a lot of programs are, for example, with the shortage of staff or with shortage of funding, they come into the end. So making sure that the program is sustainable is really important, and staff capacity building is another important factor within this principle. Each program needs to have the evaluation of effectiveness in order to revise, review the program if needed, to make sure that it is effective. And the last one is transferability and scalability. So these are the principles and the ways of thinking that you can take into consideration when you design your program or you review the existing program. And because we presented within the guides and in the virtual map different good practice programs, but it's really difficult to just copy and paste, cut and paste one particular program from elsewhere to your organization, because the context is different. So having in mind the key principles like this will help you develop the program from scratch. So right, so how to access the resources. The six guides and the framework are housed in the Department of Education website. The link is here, and we will copy in the chat box later on as well. The guides are housed there, and there is the link to the project website that is included in the Department of Education website as well. So we can go to our project website from Department website. In the project website, we house the virtual map and the videos of good practice stories, or we call case study videos from here. And from the project website, we also make cross-link, interlink to the department website, so you can always access the full set of resources from either one of them. All right, so that is a summary of all the resources we have developed from the project, and now we go into more detail for the guide for enhancing international students' mental health and well-being. And with this one, I will pass on to Helen. Helen will talk you through this one. Over to you, Helen.
Thanks, Diep. Thanks very much for providing that wonderful overview and framework of the broader project, which brings us down to this point where we can look a little more closely at the guide for enhancing international students' mental health and well-being. So first of all, just the aim of this particular guide. It's designed to assist practitioners and staff who teach and work and support international students across all education sectors, professional organisations, government and non-government organisations, and local communities. And just before I go into the key components, I think that's probably all of us here today. And although I'm an academic who does a lot of research, I am also consider myself a practitioner because I'm dealing with international students every day and have been very much in the last few years in particular dealing with international students' mental health and well-being. So a guide like this is absolutely crucial because it does bring together the key components that we need to consider. And of course, they all differ greatly across different contexts, but when used as a guide, these might give you a starting point. So the key components are, just in short, enabling and inhibiting factors when supporting international students in mental health and wellbeing, guiding principles that we will present in the next few slides, and strategies under each principle. So we all need to have those strategies. We need to have some go-to points when we do come across things that we have to work with and sort out. We'll also provide some examples to illustrate the strategies and also case studies as well. And there's reflective activity that's also included in the guide. And I just really want to make the point that this is a guide. Guides don't have all the answers, but what they help you to do is to use the skills that you already have. And people working in this sector are usually very highly skilled people, to use those skills to find your way when we're presented with situations that we may or may not have come across before. So the guiding principles are destigmatising mental health, prevention and early intervention, and developing culturally appropriate services, raising staff capability to support students during difficult times, and ensuring availability and preparedness of support services. So these guiding principles are not particularly new in a way. We've all been talking about them for a very long time. However, a lot of it has been ad hoc up to this point. And we've often had to go to different sources to find starting points and try and put it together. So there's been a lot of great things going on out there, but I think this is probably one of the first times it's all been brought together in such comprehensive guides that give people a real set of resources of go-to materials that's easy to find and find a starting point. Okay. So principle one, the destigmatising mental health. Strategies here that are suggested in the guide are introducing support services and wellbeing sessions to newly arrived students. And I find this is particularly important in the university sector where I am based. And it is happening, it's starting to happen. Often it comes down to individual lecturers putting it into their classes. But I'm finding now that we are often provided with something to add into our slides at the beginning of lectures for a new unit when students are coming in. So those sort of things are happening, and they're things that we can work on even more in the future. Accessible, visible and culturally appropriate support services. So this is having services that international students feel comfortable about. And sometimes there's a need to sort of break through some cultural barriers because there's different viewpoints about what mental health is, and also about whether it's appropriate to seek help for mental health. And so that's something that does often come to students after a period of time, but we need to make that as easy and visible for them as possible. And a student-empowered approach, you know, this is absolutely crucial, that we allow the students to have agency and to put forward their ideas about how things may work. I do think there has been great progress in that area, and we can always have more progress. Increasing international students' understanding of mental health, wellbeing and suicide prevention. And this is often very new to some students from different cultures. And how about how that such topics are accepted generally here in Australia, and therefore they can feel much more comfortable in coming forward if they need assistance. And reassure students of their visa status. Often students are very concerned if they're having health issues that may affect their visa status. So we can give some assurance that they are able to seek help and their visa status would not be threatened by that. Good practice example there, which is put in there for you to look further into the guide at. Students' Confidence's Wellbeing programs is something that you can have a look at for an example. Principle 2, prevention and early intervention. So this is so important if we can get onto issues affecting international students earlier in the process. By increasing awareness about risks to their mental health and services, looking out for signs of mental health and distress. Sometimes they're not particularly obvious. So they're the sorts of things that we come across on a daily basis, and just be aware of those. Developing prevention strategies and trying to step in at early stages before students become more unwell. Seeking help early is key, and providing clear information about health insurance and healthcare system. It's a really misunderstood part of international education, has been for many years. Students understand the importance of it, but sometimes not about the importance of keeping it when they do feel well, in the event that things can change down the track. Providing clear information around confidentiality and duty of care. It is something that they're often very concerned about, as many of you would know, in discussing about mental health issues, particularly because they fear that may jeopardise their study, or they may not want family members to know. Sharing accurate information and coordinating support services. Support services, we do have fabulous support services, but they're often, as I've mentioned before, things are a little bit ad hoc, and helping direct students where they can get help. Often in our large education institutions, we are not health institutions, so we can provide some support, but certainly not enough, and often students need to know where else they can seek support, and we need to help them with that. Connecting with health services outside education institutions feeds well into that, helping with coordinating support services. And suicide prevention, so really being on the alert and making sure students are supported when they are unwell is really crucial, and even having the topic in a guide like this is important. We do need to tread very carefully with it, but it is important that they are able to acknowledge that and there is help available. Good practice examples include mental health early intervention and at Navitas College, and relaxation sessions at Western Sydney universities. And at this time of the year, relaxation session sounds like a wonderful idea to me. So principle 3, developing culturally appropriate services. Being culturally responsible to international students' needs. We often don't have time sometimes to really understand the different students' needs, where they come from different cultures. I found that myself with many of my postgrad students, and I had a much better understanding if I had visited their country, because I thought, okay, so this is the culture they live in. It really helped me understand how they might be thinking and how they might react in a different environment. Ensuring cultural representation among staff to ensure they understand the specific challenges faced by international students. Because often there's just a blanket approach taken when we have very large class of students from very many different backgrounds, and it's often difficult to keep on top of all different cultural backgrounds, but it's really worth ensuring that there's representation among the staff so we can address problems where we do need greater understanding. Online and physical cultural networks are incredibly important. So it just helps keep those connections, and having connections during times when students' mental health and well-being is being challenged is, during COVID in particular, it showed how important that was when students' families were their main connection, their connections back home online. And peer support, having a good group of friends around them to support them is really wonderful. And we, often see students do stay in their cultural groups, and whereas it is good for them to mix with other groups, I mean, having those safe contacts around them that they trust is extremely important. Just some good practice examples are listed there. Activate University of New South Wales, International Student Mental Health Peer Work Program at RMIT and Melbourne Polytechnic that's supported by Origin. Principle 4, raising staff capability to support students. So the strategies here, increasing the understanding of the multiple factors that affect the students' mental health. And I think this is something that can be done probably in the classroom. I am seeing that happen now, which is great, and there could be a lot more of it. But it's really great that students, if they're in a studying situation where if they think there's somebody there that does understand the situation, that their experiences, they're more likely to share that and seek help. Understanding and acting on potential indicators of mental distress. So lots of learning here for staff. Understanding that gender differences, sexuality and cultural norms may affect attitudes towards mental health and self-care. And some of the research that I've done has really brought that out to the fore, in that how different it is in different cultural settings, the attitudes towards mental health and self-care, and whether it's safe to come out and talk to people about it. Understanding the fear associated with a mental health diagnosis. And this is often quite a challenging thing for anybody, and particularly an international student who's out of their normal cultural context. So it can be quite a challenging set of circumstances for them to deal with. And we need to understand how the fear that is associated with that. Understanding the stigma around obtaining support and accessing counselling services. Some of the work I've done in the past has shown that once they get over that first hurdle of accessing counselling service, they actually do use it. But there's quite a bridge to cross first, and we need to help them do that and help them understand that the stigma is maybe in many cases just coming from their particular context, and they are in a situation where it is not so much a stigma in Australia. Certainly in the university sector at the moment, there's enormous amount of support for students. Understanding students' help-seeking behaviour. So, they have been shown to start off with their friends, and often their lecturers they'll go to for support, as opposed to somebody in a much more formal position. And that's mainly because they are a little bit fearful about visa conditions and so forth. So we need to understand those patterns of behaviour so we can help with that. Organising targeted professional development. This is really crucial, and it's wonderful learning for staff to be able to learn those. There's been numerous courses being run in universities about mental health issues, so staff will have the ability to identify potential students at risk. Enhancing staff cultural capability. So providing more opportunity for staff to have more culturally capable approaches. And so they're not just applying the same approach across the board when it doesn't apply across the board. Evaluating mental health support programs. So these are all strategies that can be used for raising staff capability to support students. Principle 5, ensuring availability and preparedness of support services. So this is something we really do need to work on, I think. Pre-departure preparation is beneficial for both students and their families. And it had become a practice of the past, really. It was something that there was a lot of funds and time and thought put into pre-departure. And then it became very formal, just sort of online, which wasn't as beneficial. But that pre-departure and that planning, so students turn up in their host country with realistic expectations, is so important. Organising targeted orientation materials. And I've always thought that orientation materials should be just going on and on and on and available right throughout, because as soon as the student lands in a study country, you know, they get a little bit bombarded by materials. So we really want them to, they're not going to be able to read them all to start with, but to have them somewhere and keep them and be provided throughout time is probably a great approach there. Improving digital literacy for international students is also another key strategy, and leveraging social media platforms, because social media platforms with all their benefits and ills really do provide a connection for a lot of students and can remove loneliness and feelings of being disconnected. Leveraging existing support services. So leveraging things up is always a great idea. Good practice example, I Hear You, Wellbeing program at International House. English language intensive courses for overseas students, and vocational education providers are all good examples provided here. The Guide for Enhancing International Students' Mental Health and Wellbeing has other components. There is also a reflective activities. So there's questions to discuss when examining a mental health and wellbeing support program to help develop those. There's a glossary, cultural safety, mental health, illness, suicide, wellbeing, just all these important terms that we need to know what they are. And resources, targeted services and resources to support international students' mental health and wellbeing. So these are some lovely add-ons to this particular guide. And I'm going to hand back to Diep now, and she's going to talk about some good practice examples.
Okay, thanks, Helen. So within the guide, there are 6 case studies or good practice examples, as we call here in the guide, altogether. And today we are showcasing 2 case studies from the ELICOS and pathway sector. The first one is the early intervention initiative from the SAIBT and Salusa College, which is the Navitas College based in Adelaide. The college has provided the mental health first aid training in the workplace to their staff. So this one is aimed to provide the awareness and also the ability for the staff to identify the early signs of mental health issues, and also provide perhaps first aid support to international students. So staff can be trained to identify the early signs, and then they can submit the form, student of concern forms for intervention to happen in the college. And another type of activity in their early intervention is that they have the low attendance management project, where the student leaders are involved in making contact with their peers who have not been attending the classes. So this is an example of involving international students and other students, student leaders themselves in the support in the program to support other peers. So this is really interesting. So these are the 2 examples of the activities that they are doing, and it shows from the evidence that because of the early contact from the staff and from student leaders, there has been an improvement in student attendance and engagement in their student community after being contacted. So this is the good practice example that we want to showcase. They also conduct the evaluation through staff feedback, and also there's a short survey for student leaders to fill in as well. So this is one example, one good practice example from one college. And the next one is we want to showcase today is the I Hear You Wellbeing program. So I Hear You is being provided by International House, which is an early course and vocational institution with the campus in different cities across Australia. And this program is aimed to provide the counseling service, someone who is there to listen to international students if they have any issues with their mental health, so they can come to talk with the counselor. They are eligible for 4 sessions, which is one-on-one with a registered counselor, and there's also the chance for them to engage with the program through workshops, webinars, group discussions, in-class activities, and also meditation and mindfulness sessions as well. Since the beginning of the program, they reported that there has been more than 100 students have reached out for help, and they conduct the evaluation regularly by by the meetings among the counselors to access the cases and review the student feedback as well. So these are the 2 case studies that we included in the guide, but there are 4 other case studies, and when you have a look at the guide, you can read more information. And we try to provide the hyperlinks and also the link at the end of the case studies here to go to the program. So if you want to go to the program to read for more details, you can do so. So this is basically about the guide for enhancing international students' mental health and well-being. And the next component of the resources we want to share with you today, I will do very quickly, is the virtual map. And with that one, I will need to change screen. So we'll stop sharing and go to the website directly. And I said here how to we can access the virtual map from the project website. And I will show you right now. So let me stop sharing and go to the website. Okay, here it is. All right. So this is the virtual map, and it's basically, as I said, basically it is the directory of the services and support programs in supporting international students, and it's stored in our project website. When you go to the project website, you can see the tab, the top menu bar here, and under the tab resources, you can find virtual map. So if you click on that one, you can it will lead you to the virtual map. So the first thing you can see in this page is the map of Australia with different states and territories. These states and territories are clickable buttons. So if you click on it, it will lead you to the section where it lists all the programs available in that state. So for illustration today, I will click on Victoria, for example, and it will lead us to the Victoria section. In here, there are subheadings. With the first one is the study cluster, because each state and territory has at least one study cluster. And for the case of Victoria, there are 2, study Melbourne and study Geelong, which provide the programs and sometimes events for international students to participate in. So we included this one with the link here. So students, if they want to go to the website of this study cluster, they can do so from the virtual map. And all other programs are organized under themes. So we can see there are 6 themes here corresponding to 6 themes in the 6 guides. The first one is intercultural and community engagement, mental health and well-being, engagement with teaching, learning and language, accommodation, work-integrated learning, employability, and crisis navigation. So if we click on, for example, mental health and well-being, the list will expand, and it shows the programs related to this area. And there can be subheadings under this theme as well. For example, for mental health and well-being programs, we categorize them into emergency and 27 support programs, the general support programs, and specialist support programs. And also we listed out all the overseas student health cover provider as well, in case students need to go to this website. And these sections can be collapsed as well after you have seen it. Right, so there are different states and territories with a similar structure and the way we present here, and how we access it, as I said, is through the resources. So out of the project, we also developed the case study videos, which I can also go from the resources tab here. The case study, we developed 5 case studies, and each videos here is around 5 minutes long. In the case study, the staff from the program shared with us how they developed the program, how the program has enhanced international students in the organization. So there are 5 of them, and you can watch it in your own time. If I go to the homepage of the website, there are also buttons. For example, the first one is a good practice guide. It will link to the Department of Education website where you can find the 6 guides and the framework. And there are also the shortcut to the guides from here, the case study, and the shortcut to the virtual map from the homepage of the website. Okay, so that's it about all the resources we have developed. And let me go back to the presentation. Just bear with me 1 moment. Okay, and we are back to the presentation. And the last one we want to communicate to you is the call to action. So we really really much encourage you to have a look at the guide, especially the guide for enhancing international students in mental health and well-being, and also all other guides in the series as well. And see how they can adopt and use the guides and as well as the framework in the work that you are doing. So you can refer to the good practice programs here, or you can refer to the framework or the guiding principles under each guide and the strategies under each principle to inform the work that you are doing. Please review please use the resources and share with us how the resources have helped you in the work that you are doing. We really want to hear further feedback from you, because the resources are very comprehensive, and it's having the approach of like whole institution approach, and it can be seen from different angle, different lenses, and it can cover different parts in the life cycle of a student. We would like to hear from you about that, and we would encourage you to promote the resources in your organization and across your networks. And one way of doing so perhaps is to embed the links to the guides and framework, and also the virtual maps to your website if possible. And because we love to see the guides and the resources come to as many people as possible. And we are also doing the evaluation through the feedback form. We will send the feedback form in the chat box in a moment. You are welcome to provide any feedback or suggestions or comments that you might have on the resources, on the especially on the guides, through the feedback. And also you can write to us through the email, the project email, bestpracticeise@deakin.edu.au. So if you have any questions, comments, or any discussions you want to raise to us. So that is all we want to say today. We've been talking a bit too much, and now we will have time for the Q&A, and I would like to pass it on back to Sophie to facilitate this session. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Diep and Helen. There's one question already. If you have any other questions, please type them into the Q&A box. So I'll read out the question that we have. Someone has said that they note that there aren't any good practice examples for the raising staff capability guiding principle. Does this mean that there were not any best practice examples identified during the development of the guide in this area?
Okay, I'll take this question. The reason for not having one case study for that particular principle is because we have 2 other case studies or good practice examples in the other one, and one is about raising the first aid training program. the training provided to staff, and that is considered as one of the initiative to raise the awareness of staff in mental health issues. But because we moved that one into the other principles, so that's why there's no one there. But of course, there are examples for that principle. Yeah. Thanks,
Okay.
Sophie.
Someone's also asked in the chat if you could please share the feedback form link.
Okay, sure. Sure, I will do that right in the moment.
Can't see any questions for now, but we'll just wait another 20 or 30 seconds to see if any come through.
Right. I just pop in the chat the link to the feedback form. This is a very short survey and you can do it very quickly. So we would appreciate your time in filling in the form.
Okay, well, I think it must have been a really comprehensive presentation. Oh, there is one more question in the chat now. So, it is a good question. Is the resource guide intended to be student facing?
So the guides, the six guides and the framework are meant to support staff in developing their programs and to support international students. We included the good practice programs, but also the programs in the virtual map, so students can go to that directory and find the program that they are looking for. So that is directly student facing. And we also in our plan, there will be one resource that is intended to target the international student audience, but that will be published a bit later, not within this series of guides we have been publishing lately.
Okay, great. And is that on engagement in general?
Yes, it's about engaging international students in general, not only in mental health. Yeah, so tune in for that. We will be doing that very shortly.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, the person who asked that question about the resource guide, they said that they meant the resource map. So you've answered that question. That's great.
Yes, yes. So we recommend that staff can refer their students to the virtual map. For example, if students come to you and ask for the support programs in this or that area, you are welcome to refer them to that virtual map. And it's very easy to navigate, so they can just go there, locate themselves in the state, and then go to the themes under each state to find the programs that are available to them. There are many more programs supporting international students, but the virtual map only includes the free programs for students. Rest assured that they are free for them and they don't have to pay anything.
Yeah, what a fantastic resource. There's a question about how frequently you review the guidelines. So I'm guessing the principles, but you may interpret that question differently.
Right. So I can see there are two components that may be included in this question. It could be about the virtual map. It could be about the guide. So the purpose of the evaluation period that we are having after this series of webinar, and that is done through the feedback form, is for us to review the guides, the resources, and also the virtual map. So if you can provide any feedback that you are having, we will take that one into considerations during the evaluation period, and we might update the resources. And the virtual map will be updated regularly to make sure that it is up to date with active links, not the links that are no longer active. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know that it will be reviewed and updated. There's a question in the chat. Someone has said it's very difficult to find out whether a student is genuinely suffering from mental health issues. What is the best way to find out whether a student is genuine or not?
For this question, I will pass it on to Helen. she will be in the better position to answer this
Yeah,
question.
thank you. Look, that is such a good question. It is really, really difficult. And given a lot of us working in this area are not, we might be practitioners in the sense of what we deal with on a daily basis. We are not doctors in the true medical sense of the word, or psychiatrists or counsellors. So it really is best to make the suggestion that the student may want to seek out other help and point them in the direction of the experts who will have consultations with them, and they'll be able to have a much greater understanding because they will have had years and years of training in doing that, which we don't. We just need to be there to help them and support them and point them towards the resources available to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I can't see any other questions that have come through.
I've seen the new comment in the chat box, sorry. Question is, if someone does not talk, how to find out mental health issue?
Yeah.
Helen, can you help to answer this question?
Yeah, so what was that question? Sorry.
If someone does not talk, how to find out the mental health problem that they are experiencing?
Yeah, well, I think perhaps if they're not talking to anybody, it may be a good idea to help encourage them to seek some support of some sort, because they may open up to somebody else when they feel in a safe environment. So it is very difficult to find out whether it's just a person's personality and they're very quiet or so forth, but it probably is an indicator that that student may need some support of some kind. And hopefully, if there is a mental health issue, that may come out during that process. But again, I think it takes me back to my previous comments in that these are things to be assessed by health experts in the areas, counsellors, psychologists, and so forth. They will be able to unpack those circumstances.
And the follow-up question also from the same participant of that question is how to direct them to the right person.
I think it's a matter of giving them some options.
Yeah.
Often they will probably just may prefer to just approach a friend. Sometimes friends, I have found in different projects that I've done, they've been the ones who have sort of said, you know, I've been to counselling before and, you know, this can be a good thing, and encourage them in that way, make them feel safe about doing that. Also, students surprisingly come and talk to their lecturers. So, and we are not mental health experts by any means, but we are aware sometimes if a student is struggling, just generally, and we can put up services that are available and make it known, make it become the norm that if you're needing help, you really do need to reach out and give them some different options, and in the hope that they will find one of them a comfortable one for them.
There's a comment in the Q&A. Someone has said it's not a question but a suggestion regarding destigmatisation. A friend who is a school psychologist in a multicultural school rebrands herself as a performance coach in certain circumstances. It's the same process but a different framing, and it can help make approaching her far more acceptable for some students.
Did you want a response to that, or are you just passing on the comment? It's a good comment.
I think it was probably a comment in response to the question about how to direct
I think
people
so.
who don't want to talk.
Yeah, I might just add that it is interesting in that I spent many sessions with international students and saying, you know, how would you prefer this issue to be addressed? You know, what would you like it to be called? What's a softer approach? And so forth. And then a number of students actually said, why are you trying to sugarcoat it? Why don't you just call it what it is here and we will adapt? And I thought, oh, that's really interesting, because so there's different perspectives on that. But I do know some people who do some training in this field for students, and they call it emotional wellbeing. And that seems to be reasonably comfortable for the students as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Helen, there's one last question. It's about chatbots on AI platforms. Whether you think it's more innovative to use that approach to encourage international students to share their mental health concerns privately, especially if they feel uncomfortable sharing them with someone in person.
Yeah, did you want me to take this one? Yep.
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, look, I don't know. I'm probably the worst person in the world to ask this question because I'm an in-person person. I sort of feel if you're putting it in chat box, you're putting it out there, who knows where it's going to end up. That's just my view. But I think if they're comfortable with that and that's the only way they're going to do it, it's better than nothing if they can get some support back. But I think the in-person approach, if we can possibly provide those resources, is the way to go, in that to me is a more confidential approach than an online one. The online one, I feel, sort of removes those, it gives the appearance in removing those barriers, but to have a person that you can, if a support worker or a counsellor can gain the trust of that student and then a really trusting relationship in there, that is, in my view, and I'm not really of the IT era, so I find that is a much more trusting and supportive way to go. But online, if that's all there is, it's better than nothing.
Okay. Just some other comments in the chat, which I'll let people have a look at. But no other questions. So we do need to finish up now. Are you ready to finish up, Helen and Diep? Yes? Okay,
so.
great. Well, thank you again, Diep and Helen. It's so fantastic to see these guides coming to fruition and being available open access now. The guides are presented in a super user-friendly format and they're designed to be practical tools. So I really encourage everybody to access them. Helen, I completely agree with you about what you said, that it's so powerful to bring these guiding principles together about mental health support into one guide. And, the guide that you presented today is a really invaluable resource for the international education sector. So thank you once again to the team, to the guides team, and thank you to everybody for coming along today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you
See you
so
later.
much.
Thanks, dear. Bye.